Hello, I'm doing another video, another live chat, because yesterday so many people were asking questions I just couldn't keep up with them. So I thought I'd do another live chat, so welcome to those that's joining. So while I'm waiting for people to join, I thought I'd waffle on a little bit, unless you've got any questions. Obviously, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise I will just waffle on. So I was just going to talk a bit about the Anunnaki, only again because I'm going through it to sort of recap some of the things that I learned many years ago. So what I find interesting is the descriptions of the machines, the flying machines that the Anunnaki were using. So for example, we know that they use rockets, just from the description, but they also used a helicopter effect. Now it had 4 legs and it had a chair in the centre, and it had blades that would go round and produce what was described as a whirlwind. Now these are the ones that could hover, which was good because they obviously had rockets, or rocket type craft that can fly from one place to another and up into space, and the descriptions of the rockets into space actually match the descriptions of what we do now, where they have 2-stage rockets, and the description of the part that breaks off says it basically disintegrates and the rest goes up into our atmosphere and into space. So I found that very, very interesting. Sorry, I'm just going to go back now. I think someone's asked a question. Isn't remote viewing astral projection? Very, very, very good question. Now, it could be construed as exactly the same, yes. So with remote viewing, I mean, you know, Major Ed Dames, who was one of the teachers of remote viewing, probably won't say it's astral projection. I've never heard him say that. He may have said it, but I've never heard him say it. So I kind of agree with the person that's just wrote that was just Soul Matrix. So basically, remote viewing, for those that don't know, is you can literally be given a set of coordinates, concentrate on those coordinates without knowing what's there, and then start describing what you see. So for example, if I gave you a set of coordinates, you could not just look on Earth, you can actually look on another planet, and you can also look back in time. So I kind of agree with Soul that I think it's using the spirit that's within us, which, you know, people, when it leaves your body, becomes an astral projection. So somehow I think that, because the spirit, from my point of view, the spirit is connected to a soul group, and that soul group's then connected to pretty much everything. So if you go back to quantum entanglement, where one atom can affect another atom simultaneously anywhere in the universe, now if they've got information or can travel backwards and forwards, then one atom, for example, could give information to the other atom and vice versa. So yes, I kind of think that astral projection is a form of remote viewing. So excellent point there. If you need me to waffle on more about that, I will. Amanda's just wrote, "Stop panicking, I'm here." We all know who Amanda is. She's the one that likes to help out and reply to people when I don't get a chance to. So hi, Amanda. So yes, so unless anyone else has got any questions, I'll either waffle on about remote viewing. Remote viewing, there is courses I've mentioned before. People can go on to try and remote view. You don't even have to do it. You can actually do it with a friend of yours, or a partner or someone, and all they have to do is work out where coordinates are. So you've obviously got to know what it is that you're supposed to be looking at, because if you just give a random set of coordinates, then the person checking the coordinates wouldn't have known what's there anyway. So yeah, so you both could do it. Two people can do it. One gives a set of coordinates. There's been tests on, like, for example, Coast to Coast, where the remote viewer has asked people to given him a set of coordinates and asked them to try and remote view something, and he had, I think, like a toy helicopter or something on his desk. But the beauty of the remote viewing is, yes, he could see it was a helicopter from the distance that he was at, but some of the remote viewers, or some of the people that was trying to get what he was looking at, said they could see sort of like a small circle with things coming off of it, which were actually the blades. So in other words, that person that was trying to remote view could have been that close to the blades so they couldn't actually see the whole helicopter, but could actually see just a tiny part of the blades. So that's a really interesting thing. Okay. Can you talk about birthmarks? Yeah, so that's from Piranha. So birthmarks, obviously you can get normal birthmarks, which are just, pigmentation of the skin, etc. But you can also get the birthmarks that are a indication of how your previous life died. So there are many cases and many studies, and a lot more people doing more studies now, which is really good to see, especially in the last couple of years, into birthmarks. Obviously, the problem with the studies is they needed the people to be able to be hypnotized or regressed to confirm that their birthmark was, but obviously because of COVID and everything, the people weren't going to see the hypnotists, so they did a lot of research without using the people to get the information from. But prior to that, there is a lot of studies that's been done that collaborate the fact that you may have a birthmark on your, I'm just using one example again, the same one I've used before, but a little kid had a birthmark on his, nearest, I think it was his temple of his skull, but he was also talking about a previous life. He was saying that he was some sort of person in some area. So they went through the whole process of trying to find out who he was. Turns out that he was some sort of gangster type person and was shot in the side of the head, right where the birthmark is. So that's just one example of how birthmarks could reappear with you when you get reincarnated. So it's a fascinating subject. There's lots of information out there if you want to just Google it. There's peer-reviewed papers and things, so it's very worth looking into if you're interested. If you think you've got a birthmark and you're not sure where it's come from, that could be the case. And they don't always, they're not always there present when you're born, but over time they can manifest themselves. And I'm not 100% sure how or why it manifests itself, but it seems to do that. So I'm guessing there was some sort of trauma, maybe. I'm just throwing that one out there that you in your previous life had because of that. Okay, just scrolling on. Where Amanda's wrote, where does lucid dreaming fit in? I don't think that's anything paranormal. I think that is just to do with you. What I've found, because I've done quite a lot of research into dreams, it's so. With dreaming, no one else had seemed to have done this study, but I've done a study to see whether the position of your head and the softness of a pillow, for example, has any effects on dreams, and it does. So, for example, if you were sitting up sleeping, then you would have really, really crazy wild dreams. If you was laying down on your side but with your head tilted towards your chest, in other words your head sort of pointed down, the dreams you would have would be very fine, intricate dreams, sort of, I'm just using this as an example, sort of like engineering type dreams where you'd work out a schematic type of thing. That so there's different stages of dreaming, and predominantly my research led me to a 2-day system, which basically means something that you did 2 days ago can reappear in your dreams in, obviously in possibly in a different fashion that you probably wouldn't even work out. But it is, to me, it's not all the time, but a 2-day thing. So if something happened to you today, like you nearly got run over, for example, then in 2 days' time you'll have a dream that might have something to do with what happened 2 days prior. So I think lucid dreaming is literally just your brain trying to make sense of things and catching up with things. So I don't think it's anything paranormal, not in the things that I've researched. Just gonna scroll down. Hey Dora Azro, when do you think we're gonna make contact? Like, what decade do you think? What with aliens? Good question. You're probably gonna hate the answer to this, but from the research that I've been doing for the amount of years that I've been doing, something bad's going to happen, sadly, in the fairly near future, where I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping all these people that have said all these things are wrong, but something bad happens and the population sort of gets a bit smaller, people get put in concentration camps, and a whole new way of life becomes out of that, and it will be a few hundred years before it gets to that point of an equilibrium back. But unfortunately, that new life is artificially controlled. In other words, you won't be able to go anywhere. I mean, they're kind of queuing it up now. It's like a social scoring system. And unfortunately, people 20, 30 years ago, where I heard, for want of a better word, fortune tellers, clairvoyants, etc., had even remote viewers had gone through and said all of this. I've remembered all of this, what they've said, and so you in the future you'll have you'll be based on your scores, your credit scores, not credit as in money, but a social scoring system. And if you went to go somewhere, it won't let you in the door. This is what these people had said 20 years ago. You will not be allowed to enter because a mainframe central computer would say, no, you're not allowed in. Now, go back 20 years, that was like, before the internet, when I learnt of all these people saying all these sort of things. So, that was really far-fetched back then, but now it's not so far-fetched when you think that certain states in America, certain sort of small towns or cities are now becoming a computerized only area. So everything is computerized. So going back to the question, which was when do you think they're going to make contact? It will be properly once that's all settled back down. So at least 300 years. We'll see probably. People will see them, tell their friends and stuff. But as far as a real sort of almost disclosure, it's when there'll be a lot less people, and those people are ones that the elite want still around, so they're not too worried about those people finding out about aliens, etc. So it won't be in our lifetime, I'm afraid. Not as a proper, them turning up at your door sort of thing and flying over your house. I might be wrong, but that's just the way I sort of take it. SEFER has wrote, which studies references please? You'll just have to Google. You're probably referring to the birthmarks story that I was mentioning earlier. I'm sitting in a little room here. I haven't got the references to hand, so just have a quick Google, and you'll see that they are proper studies done by proper scientists as opposed to tinfoil hat people. So they're out there. It's quite easy to find. Soul Matrix has wrote, I have a birthmark on my neck. Okay, so that's again, they can be a natural thing. So I'm not saying that everyone's had a traumatic death in a previous life, but if you are interested and wanted to try and find out if that was, then there's not too many people that do the past life regressions. You get hypnotists that do, the don't smoke. So you need to find the proper past life regression hypnotist if you was interested. But it'd be interesting to find out. But then I've heard people say that they've done that and they regretted doing that because then their mind from then onwards was just constantly wondering and wondering and wondering about their previous life, and it pretty much messed up their life that they're living now. So be wary if you want to, imagine finding out that you was, murdered, or you was this or what was that, and then that could eat you alive now, knowing your previous life, and that's why you've got, for example, that birthmark. So just be aware of that. It might not be something you want to find out, which I guess is another reason why they don't let us remember these things. Just scrolling down. My son was born with 3 birthmarks. Okay, that's interesting, because obviously you wouldn't want to regress your young child. So I'm not saying all children do this, but children are more susceptible to knowing or remembering, slightly remembering their past lives. I use a good case. It's a BBC documentary on it about the boy from Barra, which I think was Scotland or Ireland. Forgive me, I'm trying to remember it now. But you can Google it, BBC documentary, past life, boy Barra. I don't know how you pronounce it, Barra, I think. And it's really fascinating. So that little child remembered things. There's other cases, obviously, of children remembering things. But so if your child is coming out with anything that seems out of the ordinary, then there's a tiny possibility that he or she may be remembering something from the past. But it could just be 3 birthmarks. It might not be nothing to do with that, but I throw this information out there. If people want to look it up or whatever, then feel free. Inappropriately has wrote a question for you. Are the Anunnaki made us? What happens when we die? So it's probably, if the Anunnaki made us, what happens when we die? So well, basically our spirit, which is what's joined with us, leaves our body, which has got all of our feelings, memories and everything else. We sit around, either we stay on the astral plane or we move up to the next plane, and then from there, at whatever point, we go in front of a council of aliens, different aliens, including the light beings, which is what the spirits are. So you as a light being get offered another life, and we come back and join with another unborn baby at that point, and life goes on. So the Anunnaki, from what I gather, also knew about spirits and stuff, because in the book of Enoch, I did a little video showing, in the same passage, in the same paragraph, the Anunnaki talk about standing there with one of the angels. Now, please remember, the angels are just like guards or military people or police or something like that, not an angel floating, because in the same paragraph it talks about Enoch standing there with an angel, so a military person, for example, looking at a dead body and seeing the spirit come out of the dead body. So we know that the spirit is not an angel. We know that angels are flesh and blood because of the amount of descriptions of them leading and taking and standing and chatting with Enoch. So we know an angel is not a floaty being. And we know the Anunnaki could see dead people or spirits leaving bodies. So they obviously had the ability to see that, whereas we can't. We can see orbs using, which is basically a spirit. We can see that using infrared cameras and night vision cameras, etc. But obviously, if you had that eyesight, if you had that ability, the same as infrared, night vision, whatever, then you could probably see orbs all around. So that's possibly what Enoch saw. So when we die, we just literally, and then when we're reincarnated, obviously we totally forget everything that we learnt before. So it's kind of sad. But for the spirit that's with you, the energy ball, that doesn't remember, and it learns, and it keeps going on and on and on until it moves up the different planes of existence. Hello to May Bio. Can you tell me about alien animals? So really good question, because I've wanted to know about alien animals. After watching Avatar, you start thinking, okay, what else is on other planets? So animals are on other planets, according to people that's been taken. And when I say taken, they're not abducted, they're contactees. So there's one particular case where a contactee was taken to another, literally solar system, and was shown a planet, and was told that on that planet is not humans, but people, we'll call them people, but whatever they were on that planet, that were still evolving. So in other words, a human from Earth was shown another planet. So in other words, on that planet, they could have been looking up. Let's just call them avatars, for want of a better word. These little creatures on another planet that will eventually evolve, apparently, into a sentient race that will end up being part of the space. Hopefully a space council, along with all the other alien races that's out there, and a human standing there on a ship looking down at this planet, and these little creatures, or I'm calling them creatures, there was no description of them, but these beings are looking back up at a UFO while they're in a lesser evolution state than we are. So let's just imagine, I don't know, 5,000 years ago, whatever. So let's imagine that they were there. So could that be happening now? Could the UFOs that are flying over us be looking at Earth with other aliens from other planets saying, look how backwards these humans are? But apparently there was indigenous life on there, aliens, animals and stuff. But there's not many people that actually ever talk about what kind of animals they are. So I would love to know. I wish I could tell you more. There's no 30 years of listening to people on talking about other planets and stuff. I mean, you've got people talking about inner Earth, animals and stuff, but other planets, they don't really talk about them, which is a real shame. But there apparently are animals on other planets, which I guess would make sense. Rose Kelly's asked birthmarks. Okay, so I've done, forgive me, I've kind of done, someone's already asked sort of nearly half hour ago. So I don't want to sort of repeat myself. This video will go onto YouTube later on this evening. Live chat 29, I think it'll be. So if you want to listen to everything that I've mentioned about birthmarks, because they are to do with, possibly to do with reincarnation, do have a listen to this live chat number 28 on YouTube later on tonight. So forgive me for not answering it now. It's just otherwise I could end up repeating it over and over. Soulmate Tricks has wrote, it wouldn't faze me knowing the truth. That's about the birthmarks, in fact. No, I mean, if you don't mind being hypnotized, then go for it and let us know if there is any. I mean, if you are regressed, the birthmark may just be a normal birthmark, but you may end up finding out something about yourself anyway, having how many different lives you've had. Now there are very, very few hypnotists that can go back past more than one life. So you need to look out which ones are the right ones, and always try and record the interview, because the last thing you want to do is be underneath someone's hypnotism and not find out anything. Yeah, so Chewbacca just wrote, "Hi Chewbacca." My wife said she chose her parents before she was born. That's exactly the way the story goes. Yeah, I mean, this was one of the very first things I learnt when I was learning stuff. Um, was that you make an agreement? Well, I mean, it says it in the Bible. You make an agreement. I think it says it in the Bible. You make an agreement, a soul, what they call the soul contract. So yes, you do. You choose your parents in front of the council. They offer you the chance to go. You say yes or no, and then your soul group's part of that as well. So I don't know how many's in a soul group. So far I've got to about 6 that I can work out. That 6 are all connected to each other as a soul group. So they could end up being your parents, your brother, friend, someone that you will end up being in contact with throughout your life. So yeah. Okay, just scrolling down. Never Gonna Getty has wrote, "No, God is real, aliens are fallen angels." Okay, so I've actually done a video on, just done it this morning, in fact, the descriptions, because people, in my opinion, so many people are saying different things and what they think, like, they're demons, aliens are fallen angels, God is, this, that, and the other. So I did a video which will probably be uploaded probably by the end of the week. But basically, I've gone through and said, look, Anunnakis, there's 12 Anunnakis that are classed as gods. 12 was actually a very important number to them. So Anunnaki, the name Anunnaki, those who heaven came, we have to replace heaven because we now know it's space. Those from space that came to Earth. So Anunnakis are just the everyday workers or people that live on Nibiru, that came from Nibiru to help mine the gold. So you've got the gods, which were basically the prince, 2 princes, the sister goddess, and so on. 12 of those, plus the dad and whatever. 12 gods. That's what they're called. The whole race is Elohim. Then you've got the Anunnaki, which are just basically subjects of the prince and the king and whatever else. So they're called the Anunnaki. So they're the sort of standard people. Then you've got the Nephilim, which were the hybrids of the Anunnaki and humans, which were giants. And angels were just army people or guards or something like that. The fallen angel part, the fallen is actually them being disowned by the Anunnaki, by the gods. So the fallen, so forget the word fallen, it's really a bad word. It's like, they shouldn't have done it, they're disowned, some word to describe that. So that's what fallen angel is. Archangel is just a higher up guard, army person. It's hard to describe what role they were, but it was something similar to that. So an archangel is a higher up sort of commander or captain, and just an angel is just the ones that came from the spaceships up. When you read the hundreds, and you're going to laugh at me here, hundreds of thousands of text documents, not just in Sumerian cuneiform, but also in Babylonian, in I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Amoraic. It's going to hurt me now. Yeah, you know what I mean. So there are literally hundreds of thousands, and probably there was even more, probably all destroyed. So that's a hell of a lot of fake backstory for loads of different people in different times, writing in different languages, the same story continuing on. You have to then say, okay, maybe this is all real. And so fallen angels are literally just the bad Anunnaki that had relationships with humans. So Silk Beta has wrote, so people who are angels, would they know it? So angels, like I say, angels were Anunnaki. That's just another name for it. So they're not floating around. There's the texts, the ancient texts say that they were real. They were standing. They would lead him. They would take Enoch. They would help him. But there was also the spirits. So angels is just another name for, I say military, but it could be guards or whatever. So yeah, there's no such angel floating around. There is spirits, yes, which is different from an angel. So hopefully that I know it sounds convoluted, but if you read everything, it just becomes very clear. Inappropriately is wrote, I just don't understand why aliens just don't show themselves. Because first of all, there was the treaty that Eisenhower done with. So originally, I'll be quick. Originally, there was going to be a treaty with possibly, we think it was the Palladians that came down and said to Eisenhower, "Stop your nuclear weapons, and we will enlighten you." And Eisenhower said, "Yes, what do you mean enlighten?" And they said, "Well, we'll raise your consciousness." And he said, "Well, okay, but what's in it for us?" And they said, "Well, we're raising your consciousness." Eisenhower said, "What, no weapons then?" And Palladians said no. So they left. And then I think it was about 2 weeks later, possibly the two whites came down with a couple of little greys, done another deal with Eisenhower, actually done a deal where they would take people, experiment on them in return for technology. So straight away, because they've done a deal with us, that's part of why they don't get seen. Because obviously, imagine if they were real, then everyone that's been abducted will say, "Hang on a minute, why isn't our government stopping us?" And then there'll be lawsuits and all sorts of things. But prior to that, obviously, there was the quarantine that was put on Earth to stop alien races coming in and attacking us, etc., or showing up or changing any of our history. Now, that I think happened after the Anunnaki had already changed our history. So that's why the aliens had to do a treaty with us to agree, because obviously they couldn't just come down and take people, because even though they were actually, but because of the council's quarantine on Earth, so they decided, well, hey, if we're taking people, we might as well try and get an agreement out of this so that we can carry on doing it without getting, found out by the Council of Aliens. So basically, yeah, Earth's in a quarantine, and until either there's a treaty or an agreement between Earth and whatever alien race that wants to show themselves, they ain't ever going to show themselves, unfortunately. So it's not down to us. As Obama once said on, I think it was a Jimmy Kimmel show, he says, Kimmel asked him, why aren't the aliens showing? Why are you not telling us about the aliens? And he turned around and said, because words to this effect, I'm paraphrasing, but he said because they won't let us. So it's not us. Sometimes it might be them. Inappropriate is wrote, now inner earth is also interesting. I won't waffle on about that unless you ask me a specific question. Teddy's wrote, you're an agent, still think you know the truth. Not sure what that means. I mean, I'm just throwing stuff out, if that's what you mean. Only from my research, it's just to save people doing 30 years of research, I try and help. I'm just trying to read. Soul Matrix says, I had a dream I had 44,000 lives. May Bios wrote, what positive vision of the future would you recommend to have for our civilization? Well, the logical one would be, where everyone agrees on something and then it gets done. But we've tried that with governments where we all agree to give the power to one, and then that one would make those decisions for us. That's where the problems are. So somehow in the future, if we was ever to get past that, we need a system where we don't rely on a handful of people like we do now. Whether or not that's even possible to have a system where we can all agree sort of basically like every time you do something, you vote. That way, no one person or no group of people are in charge of us. That's the only way. Whereas aliens, from the things that I know about the aliens, they're all different. They don't they don't use money. If you're interested, let me know. I'll waffle on about how they live without money and how they work and stuff, and who gets chosen to do what. I mean, that is the ideal civilization, but unfortunately, we've been stuffed with money. I'm just going down. Bradley's wrote, do you believe the Anunnaki will return soon? Absolutely not. No, a couple of people have asked me, and the more I think about it, no. I mean, they've been here, they've been working with the military, according to whistleblowers. When they left, they had no real interest in us. I don't think they've got any real interest with us now. Other aliens, virtually every other alien you can think of that we know of, have visited Earth far more than the Anunnaki have since they left. And I don't even know if they've still got the rocket technology that they had when it was first here, or whether they've now managed to get anti-gravity. Because if they haven't, then it's a little bit of an effort for them to get here, as opposed to anti-gravity, which is a lot easier to do by the other types of aliens. So no, their planet may, if the planet is real and it comes back round on that elliptical orbit, then yeah, that would make sense, because you go back every 3,600 years approximately, and there's some sort of major disaster on Earth, probably because of their planet being 4 times the size and the gravity against Earth, causing us to have earthquakes, floods, and stuff like that. So their planet may come back around, but you ain't gonna. In my opinion, you ain't gonna see the Anunnaki turn. There's no point. They don't need us. There's nothing we have that they want, really, and they're probably just meeting the military for part of some sort of galactic alliance, if anything, because we do have a space fleet, which has been going for a long time now. So we are out there in different types of space vehicles. So you've got. I'll waffle on about that later, but yeah. So basically, yeah. Soul Matrix has asked someone a question. Question is, who made the Anunnaki? So that's yeah. So I think I mentioned this in the live chat yesterday, where Enlil turns around and says, "No, don't make humans, or don't make the new slave species, which was us, in their image." And he then says, and this is written down, he then says, because he wants their bloodline and everything to be pure, which is another reason why they didn't like the angels or the military that had relationships with humans, because that was against what the Anunnaki were about. But he also said, I'm paraphrasing again, but something like the Lord, not Lord, but their image should only be from their creator. So in other words, they mentioned that they have a creator that they look up to, which probably explains why they come up with the idea of a god for us, calling themselves gods, that we have to worship, because they probably do the same to whatever it is that they see as a god. So, I mean, if you want to go further back, there's the old story that an ancient race, now one of the oldest ancient races that we know of that's still around is the praying mantis, but I have a feeling that it wasn't them, but the story goes that an alien race went around seeding different planets. Yes, there was a Star Trek episode very similar to that, where they ended up working out that DNA was spread across the universe. So there is that theory that that's how life all started on different planets. But the Anunnaki do think, and so does some of the other aliens, they do think that there's something else out there. The little greys call it the source or creation. But what that is, I can't answer. I mean, is it a matrix? Is it just a thought? Is it, I don't know. But yeah, interesting. Vanessa has wrote, "How do you know all this info?" I'm sad. While you lot was out dancing and partying and doing stuff, I was probably researching. Yeah, so I think the very first thing that got me was my mum reading a story out on a newspaper about, and this apparently happened a lot because I was talking to her recently again about it, and she said, "Oh, that used to happen a lot in the newspapers." So there was a couple, old couple. The guy went out to the back garden where they used to have firewood. So this is going back a few years, um, and he went to go get some firewood for the fire, and he just disappeared. And that, hearing that at what 5 or whatever it was, just set my imagination. Wow, that just got me. And then since then, I lapped up all sorts of stuff, listened to podcasts, read as many information books as I could, chatted to some of the researchers that on TV, just basically devoured the information and then started to put a logical spin on it, which is why the videos I've tried to do is done in a logical order as opposed to just suddenly splurting out. There's aliens, but if you watch them in the order from one onwards, they kind of hopefully make some sort of more sense than just so that's really just me. Sad, really, I know. Cole wrote. It's really difficult these names. Something Dream has wrote Circles, so I'm guessing you're referring to the crop circles. So they're the real ones, not forget the ones that the humans do. The real ones. Somehow there's some sort of orb. Now, whether or not it's the same light orb as the spirits, I'm unsure. It probably could still be the same sort of orbs, and they come out of the ground and then they come up and they communicate with each other. So there's normally two. Some sort of like spark happens between the two of them. You can't hardly see it, but apparently it does. That's actually been captured on film. If you're wondering which one, that's the castle one. I know people are going to say that's been debunked, but trust me, it hasn't. If you trust me, that was real, genuine footage of Crop Circle being filmed, and I know about film, and I know that it was shot way before what they call match moving was available to the home user. So, cut a long story short, these orbs come up. They use a microwave style. I can't remember the exact hertz, etc. Off the top of my head, but if you want to look up Dr. Levingood, he's got all the information on what kind of frequency it is that will bend the nodes on the crop circles and the nodes, the knuckles, and they get superheated like a microwave basically, and it only in that particular part, and that's when the crop circles drop down into the pattern that they obviously had already predetermined. And then the crop circles yield a 400% more yield of crop than the crop outside of one of these circles. So that's a phenomenon straight away. The question then is why are crop circles even done? They're not done for humans, or they weren't originally done for humans. They date back 400 odd years, so we couldn't have seen them. We would have needed aerial vehicles. So the crop circles were messages, in my opinion, for a race that could see them from, because obviously if you're an energy, you can't really talk to an alien and say, because you've got no vocal cords or anything. But if you can manipulate something such as crop, then you can do a pattern, which is what they do. And now aliens, the Zetas that have taken and worked with humans before have showed them a language and tried to teach them a language. And in one image, eventually when the human finally figured out, or the contactee finally figured out, A equals this, blah, 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 blah. When they got shown a series of like 4 or 5 images, similar to crop circles, the person had read a whole book in just looking at 4 or 5 images. So we know that those images, even though to us, they look very symmetrical and things like that. They could be relaying so much information about Earth. The reason why they come up from the Earth is probably because they're given the information about the planet to the people or the aliens or whatever it is that's watching them from above. Now that then brings into the question, because Linda Moulton Howe has looked at these as well, obviously in probably more depth than me. So she's come across people that say that some of the crop circles were given information about the sun and whether or not it was going to project a coronal discharge, etc., in the near future. I can't say that for sure. Could it just been a coincidence that someone was, looking at crop circle and then saw coronal and said, that makes... I don't know. There wasn't much to go on for other than that, but hopefully that sort of gives you something about crop circles. If you want more, let me know. I'm just going to scroll down. Our ghosts, our guides, from Laurie. Good question. Yes and no. Really good question. So when you die, you have a soul group that you go back and sort of join with. So far, I've counted 6 that I can say would be part of your soul group. There could be more, but to me, so far, I've sort of worked out that there seems to be 6 in a soul group. There might be more for different people, whatever, I don't know. But so that soul group is not your guides. They're not your guides. They're the ones that come and join with you on Earth as your mother, as your brother, as a friend, as whatever, so that you all learn together. But the spirit guides, the ones that people call spirit guides, are deceased people. So in other words, the entity that was joined with that person, that's got all the person's memories and feelings and everything else, that crosses over to the astral plane when you die. Fine. So that's not, at that point, that's not your spirit guide. That entity then crosses over again, and possibly crosses over again before they become a spirit guide. So they've learned all they can on Earth, for example, because Earth's what they call one of the training grounds. So they learn everything they can, then they get moved up the different planes of existence, and once they get to a certain plane, they then become your spirit guide. But it's not your spirit guide. It's the entity that's in you that they're there to help and guide and look after, because you are just a container, as described by Little Greys. So although you might be saved from falling rocks, for example, there's many cases like someone sleeping, driving a truck, and suddenly they see a hand pull the wheel just in time for them to be saved from going off a cliff. That's not really saving the guy, that's saving the entity, so the entity can carry on and learn in that life. So I know it sounds kind of sad, doesn't it? Because it makes it sound like that we're nothing. And technically, according to everything, we are nothing. We're just containers going about our bits. So the spirit guides are not really there for you. They're kind of there for the entity that's with you, so that the entity can carry on and learn its course. So eventually that can then move up and become a spirit guide. So sadly, if they help you survive an accident, it's not because they really like you and you're fun or something like that. It's because that's what they're trying to keep you. That's why when you die and you're not supposed to have died, your spirit guides or who you meet on the other side will say, you weren't supposed to die yet, and it's not you that they're concerned about. It's the spirit that's just left you that they're talking to, saying, look, you really shouldn't have died. You needed to go back and learn more, or you needed to be the person that did this, X, Y, Z, whatever it is that you've agreed before you even joined with with the person. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And just scrolling down now. Wow, lots of questions. Excellent. Have you Monza's wrote? Have you heard of Ceres versus the Orions? The Syrians, basically. Not as in a fight with them. I don't recall. If you know a little bit more, let me know. I know, I mean, I know of Orions, and I know what comes from there, and I know about the portals and blah blah blah. But and Amanda's replying back to Laurie about the spirit soul being inside, like being inside you. Yes, well done, Amanda. Just scrolling down. So someone's asked, I can't even pronounce, IT Bro has asked, aliens taking the vaccination too? No, I wouldn't have thought so. If they were, then they're thicker than we are. Just scrolling down. Sorry, I'm just a couple of people replying to each other. So May Bios wrote, "Thank you, heart. You're more than welcome." Sometimes it's probably not the answers you want. I'm just one person that's just done my sort of own research. So, but to me, it all makes sense, and it seems logical. Starry's wrote, "I had a dream that the Anunnaki were coming." I mentioned earlier that I really don't think they're coming at all. There's no benefit for them to come here even to take over Earth. They would have done that a long time ago. They would have done it before we managed to get sort of weapons that can kill them. So, the Anunnaki, I can't see them coming here. I did mention on another live that, it's not to say that some of them, the fallen angels, which are really just Anunnaki that have relationships with, it's possible they may have carried on living here, in exile, and now, might be pulling the strings behind the elites, or governments. That might be a possibility. Do you think we beings have the telekinesis ability? Thank you for asking that question, Laurie. Yes, to a point. So there's videos out there, obviously, of people, but the best one, which you probably might not know of, was a security guy, that used to sit by this electric generator, day in, day out, day in, day out. And then one day he went to reach for a cup, and the cup moved. So is telekinesis sort of an electrical charge, or is it a discharge from your soul aura that surrounds you? And these are good questions, because they could be one of the same or both. Now, your aura or chakra from what I understand, is a real thing, and it can be attacked, and that's what the jinn do. The jinn actually try and attack your aura, and if you've got a weak aura, then the jinn will eventually break through that and then try and fight the spirit that's already in you to take place, and that's when exorcisms and all that kind of stuff starts getting involved. But so yes, I think certain people have the abilities. There's some case studies been done, and I mean, if you think Uri Geller, I know obviously people think he's a bit of a scam, but he's he worked for the CIA for X amount of years doing these kind of things, and he says that telekinesis is a real phenomenon that we've lost over time. So then that begs the question that if we had that ability, was it a sort of a DNA thing or whatever? Did the Anunnaki have that, the ones that created us? And if they had the ability to move things with their minds, then building pyramids and things like that probably wasn't too difficult for them. So I'm not saying it wasn't levitation using acoustics, which is where I'm leaning more to for the building of the pyramids. But if they had some ability that could manipulate things more than we can, then telekinesis could be a real thing. And there's been many studies by the Americans actually over the years to do with things like remote viewing and telekinesis. But obviously they keep those projects under wraps because the last thing they want to do is let everyone know, especially their enemies, that these abilities are available. So I think if we did have it, it's now gone, and maybe a few people still have the ability to do it. But I think it might be to do with the chakra or your energy from your body. Some Monzan has asked, "What about flat Earth?" Where I can't see a flat Earth. I've asked simple questions and no one's answered them, so I can't see. I just and the dome as well. Don't get me started on that. I've asked. I've even gone on other people's posts where they're talking about the dome, the firmament. And if you want to know what my thoughts are on the firmament, go back and watch some of my live chats that are on YouTube. But I asked them about one simple thing about Halley's Comet. 73 years, every 73 years, we've got records of it going back 1,000+ years. What happens to it? Does it hit the edge of the firmament and then someone else set it off going again 73 years later? And they can't answer that. So until someone answers that, as far as I'm concerned, the Earth is round and doesn't have a dome over it. I'm so far behind again on these messages. I'll be as quick as I can. In fact, actually, crap, I'm nearly up to my time. How would another planet cause earthquakes? Yeah, it's to do with the gravity, because there's a thing called Bode's law that certain planets have to be a certain distance from each other so that they don't affect each other, but yet can still be pulled around in the gravity fields of the sun. And there's a missing planet, and that planet supposedly is. Cut a long story short, there's because it goes in. I haven't got the time to explain about Tiamat and the different names for the planet that should have been there that ended up being the asteroid belt, etc. But basically, there's a planet that comes back round, and it's 4 times the size of Earth, and it's not just me saying that it would cause earthquakes, etc. It is. Scientists have said, if there was a body of that size traveling, so they've obviously looked at the route that Nibiru would take. They've all agreed, yes, it would cause earthquakes, tsunamis, all that kind of stuff. So, unfortunately, if Nibiru is in the right path where we think it is going to come, it's not a great path for us. If we was lucky, we could have been further away. Different time of year, different time of the celestial circle that goes round and round, but unfortunately we're fairly near it. So if it does come back, we might get hit with something. It would only last about 15 days, but it's going to be a hell of a 15 days, and we'll be bombarded with meteorites as well prior to that, because I haven't got the time to explain, but yeah, there's meteorites that would come flying with that. And once again, I am now out of time, and there's still 99 messages, so you guys are absolutely fantastic, asking some great questions. I hope you don't mind me sort of elaborating on some of the questions you've said. I know I could just skip over them and be very brief, but I hope you like them sort of answered as full as I can. So I know when I listen to radio programs, I like them when they're full. Instead of saying, oh yes, aliens are this, and then moving on to the next person's question. So I forgive me if I didn't ever get to your questions. And some great questions. I'm just looking down now. I'm going to have to do another live tomorrow, just to for you guys, because there's some great questions I can see. So if you're interested, I will do a live tomorrow at noon, same time UK time, 12 o'clock. So please feel free to join me then and ask me any questions. But this will go on YouTube. So if you've missed anything that I've said or want to listen to me again, heaven forbid, space forbid, should I say, instead of heaven, then this will be on YouTube probably later on tonight, and it'll be live chat number 28. So thank you once again, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed as much as I have, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thank you. See you tomorrow, hopefully. Bye.